Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. I'm Stephanie Churchman and I'm the Communications Manager here at Blackmores. Today we've got a bit of a different episode for you all, as it's a roundtable discussion covering a working group known as BedX. This group was formed in response to the Universal project currently being built in Bedfordshire and aims to help local businesses capitalise on opportunities generated through the upcoming attraction. And this includes improving the area ahead of the inevitable influx of contractors and tourists. As you can imagine, it's created quite the buzz for businesses in the area, and our lovely guests today are spearheading the group that's bringing all of these businesses together to collaborate to get the most out of the opportunity. Today, we're going to be diving into what BedX aims to achieve, the work that Lorna and Kirsty do within the group, and how BedX can help businesses looking to get involved with a new UK-based Universal theme park. We're also joined by our very own commercial director, Carly.
Hi there. My first time on the podcast, and lovely to have our two fantastic guests who bring two very different but equally important perspectives to the conversation. Both businesses are partners to Blackmores, and we've worked with them both for some years now. First up, we've got Kirsty, the Commercial Director at THSP. THSP work with businesses across health and safety, HR and compliance, helping organisations make sure they've got the right systems, processes and people in place to operate safely, professionally and compliantly. And then we've got Lorna, the Managing Director of LBS, who brings the financial perspective to the table. Because it's one thing to win a contract, but it is another thing to have the financial strength, cash flow and infrastructure behind you to actually deliver it successfully. And I think, ladies, that's what makes this conversation so interesting. Because when you've got a project of this scale that comes to Bedfordshire, there's obviously a massive opportunity for local businesses, but it's not simply a case of waiting for the phone to ring. And that's why you two have been so busy behind the scenes working and being part of BedX and being such a, forward-thinking group for our county. So if businesses really want to compete for these opportunities, they are going to need to be ready.
Absolutely. And that's why BedX exists with the Bedfordshire Opportunity Exchange. And we are here to help those businesses that are serious about getting involved, be visible, prepared and connected in the right places. And our role isn't just to inform, it's also to educate.
Perfect. Well, we'll be diving more into that. So before we get into it, I thought Carly gave you a lovely introduction there, but I thought it'd be nice to hear from both you, Kirsty and Lorna, in your own words, a bit more about LBS and THSP and a bit about yourselves, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Lorna, do you want to go first?
If you like. So I run Leonard Business Services, or LBS for short. It's an outsourced finance department business. I like to think that we ferret into our customers. We're part of their business. It's not us and them. I set the business up 14 years ago, having worked previously at all different levels within finance, through blue chip companies right down to the last business I worked with as an employee. I was employee number 2. So, all different sized businesses. And I hope that brings, that really comes out in the offering of LBS, because I think I really do understand how businesses work, not just the finances of businesses. Kirsty.
I work for THSP, a Bedfordshire-based employee-owned health and safety and HR consultancy. THSP stands for the Health and Safety People, and that's who we have always been since 1992 when we were formed. THSP are known for our work in construction, but risk exists in every organisation, and we support businesses ranging from small independent employers to household name food brands, global luxury retailers, major transport organisations and complex international businesses operating in highly controlled environments and even space exploration. So whether you are running a local shop, delivering a pizza, moving people around London, operating a haulage fleet or managing a major construction project, you have a legal duty to protect your people, manage workplace risk and treat your employees fairly. So THSP helps businesses to understand those obligations and put practical systems in place to meet them. But for us, compliance is the baseline. It's the minimum. Policies, risk assessments and procedures are important, but culture is the multiplier. And the way that leaders behave and the decisions managers make and what people do when nobody is watching are what determine whether or not those systems work. And we provide support at every stage, from straightforward advice for startups and smaller employers, right through to retained consultancy, competent person support, and fractional health and safety or HR director services, with everything in between. We are experts in risk, but our purpose is very simple. THSP exists to prevent harm and help make sure that everyone goes home safely at the end of each day. We give businesses clear and practical advice on what works in the real world rather than just producing paperwork for the sake of it. And now Bedfordshire is entering this significant period of inward investment. These opportunities will reach far beyond those major construction projects themselves. And how lucky are we to be in Bedfordshire at a time like this? And THSP has that experience, capability, and also capacity, along with local understanding, to help businesses make the most of the opportunity coming and to help them grow responsibly and protect their people while they do it.
Wonderful. We've had a lot of experience with you guys because obviously you guys are partners with Blackmores, so we're always singing your praises. And thank you for sharing that with our audience. I think, Lorna, you've been on our podcast a couple of times before.
I have, yeah.
You'll have to link your previous episodes in the show notes. And Kirsty, I think this is your first time coming on.
This is my first time on this podcast, second time on a podcast. This is quite different to how I did it last time. That was like recorded live in one take. So This is quite nice.
I'm afraid you have to have the ability to do editing whenever I'm on a podcast.
You both describe your businesses with so much passion. And I think that's why, you mentioned about culture, having that, really positive impact on everything that you do is why we work so well together.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Because it's all about the people, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Exactly.
Before we get started, can you just tell us what BedX actually is?
BedX is the Bedfordshire's Opportunity Exchange. It's a business-led working group powered by the Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce. We exist to help Bedfordshire businesses understand, prepare for, and win work from the major investments coming into our region, particularly universal destinations and experiences, the Luton Airport expansion and Power Court. Our role is to connect, inform and prepare, but we don't lobby and we don't represent the developers, and we don't do politics. We are simply here to help local businesses get ready.
So in our intro, we kind of gave a bit of background as to sort of the creation of BedX being obviously that universal project. Is that the main driver, or is there other reasons why the group was created?
Universal is like that banner piece, right? It's the one where all of the big numbers are attached to, that £5 billion worth of inward economic investment, the 20,000 jobs, the 5 years of construction. But that's just one part of what's going on in Bedfordshire. There is so much other work coming in, so many other projects. There's a railway station at Wixham's. There's the work they're doing at the Luton Hoo. There's the new Luton Town Football Club. There's the data centre over at Quest Pit. And there's that wider waterfall effect that's going to happen from Universal Studios. It's not just going to be about what's happening there at the park. It's all of those other projects as well. So that's why BedX was created. It's not just about Universal. It's to help connect those Bedfordshire businesses with all of that inward economic investment and all those fantastic projects that are coming to our area.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because, as Kirsty said, everybody jumps on the words universal, universal United Kingdom. But to be honest with you, there is as much other investment. I mean, people don't realise quite what a seismic shift is happening in our little county. And the projects that Kirsty mentioned, Luton Hoo, Luton Town Football Club, Kirsty, I can't remember what it's called, but the redevelopment of Vauxhall.
Vauxhall, yeah, that's happening as well over in Luton.
They're happening now. They are looking for supply chain support now. Universal, to be fair, are quite early on in that sort of like project plan. So, what we do for Universal now is about preparation for when that happens, whereas these other things are like clear and present. So, people do get really excited about the Universal name, but it's not the only name in town.
No. And we're really, really passionate about making sure that it's all of that investment that's covered in this.
Yeah.
Lorna and I quite often are saying, it's not just Universal, it's everything that's coming our way.
Well, it's absolutely that. And it's not just the development structural delivery that's going to impact the county, is it? It's more housing. There's more housing being developed, part of the Black Cat roundabout development. Obviously, that's going on at the moment, and there's obviously significant investment in there as well. But it's also about making this a place to come and stay as well. So there'll be that ongoing development of, what else is around. We don't want people to come to Universal, if we're talking about that, and then leave. Want them to stay and there be other services, other things around that would keep them here. And I think that's also really important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's part of the Bedford Council have got a scrutiny committee, and they label it under Universal Scrutiny Committee because that is the banner project. But one of the things they were talking about was that tourist piece and how they can help people with that tourist strategy to make Bedford that destination where people don't want to just come to the park and leave. Bedford becomes somewhere where people want to spend some time.
Yeah. There's lots here, isn't there? Tourism and hospitality are going to be a big development piece as through all of this. And we think about what has happened in the last 10 years. There's been a lot of shrink. A lot of places have closed. Obviously, COVID had an impact on that. Banks going and all of that kind of thing. So there is space for all of this to happen. And there are new businesses popping up all the time. And they're definitely going to need the help of people like, businesses like you guys, where they're not going to have that infrastructure in place or that professional knowledge that they need. So
it's a conversation I was having this morning as well. There might be businesses that want to do something here but don't know where to get working capital or access to cash. And I think Lorna's expertise there is going to be really beneficial for those local businesses that want to scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned, Steph, in part of the introduction, but it's cash flow in particular is something that people often overlook. They go hell for leather to win a contract, and the cash flow drain on a growth project is really intense. I can give you quite an extreme but very real example of this.
Yeah.
Years ago, I worked for a company that made point of purchase display equipment, and they had a US subsidiary, and that US subsidiary was one of the shareholders lived and worked there. That shareholder won an inordinate amount of business from Anheuser-Busch. In case anyone doesn't know, Anheuser-Busch are the company that own Budweiser. Now, I think they're the largest sort of brewing business in the world. I remember a telephone call from the shareholder who put through all of these orders and placed it with the factory direct, etc., in China, to say, okay, so what are we going to do now? Because obviously I've signed up to, wait for it, drum roll, 180 days terms from delivery to warehouse. So there we had, when I looked at it, we had got $2.7 million of exposure to our suppliers that kind of fell due about 150 days prior to us getting any money. And this was the first time we'd worked with them. So there was by no means any sort of intelligence that says, yeah, they're going to pay. I have to say that was one of the most creative periods of my career to ensure that we got our way through that. We did get our way through that and ended up being a completely different company as a result. But not having that thought process right from the beginning, that could have been an entirely different story. So, you do really need to have every part of your business involved in these sorts of, if you're going to bid for something that's out of your, normal comfort zone, then you really need to think about it from every perspective and not just get hooked up on the fact, hey, great, I've won a new deal. You've actually got to deliver it.
And that's one of the parts I'm really passionate about, is ensuring that businesses are trying to grow responsibly, so they understand those terms in the bid and that they're realistic about the size of contract that they should be bidding for. Katie from Bid and Tender Support also delivered a webinar for BedX, and that is available in the on-demand library, and that talks about the different criteria for how you can assess whether or not you should be looking at a different bid. And it is really easy to get swept up, like Lorna said, and get excited. But these contracts can have really stringent clauses in them as well about delivery. And if you don't meet them, there can be huge penalties. So we want to make sure that all of those businesses that might want to get involved understand what it can mean to work for a tier 1 contractor.
Yeah, without it being scary, because it does sound a little bit scary. You know, it's about having those things in place, isn't it? And making sure that you're, as you say, you're compliant, that you've got the backing of, you know, all areas of the business. And if you're scaling that quickly, then, you know, the sorts of things that we put in place are management systems to ensure that everybody is working in the same way, that you're compliant, that you have quality checks, that you understand how this happens on a much larger scale is super, super important, and something that, you know, a lot of our clients talk about getting the best out of their management systems. So yeah, it doesn't have to be too scary. Just make sure that you've got everything and got all your ducks in a row.
And reality, being realistic about what it is that you bid for.
I mean, let's face it, every single one of these tier 1 companies that we talk about and revere, they were at one point a 1 or 2 person business. You know, nobody gets to be a tier 1 without going through the stages that probably 90% of the people listening to this podcast are in today. Well, you know, in the BedX, I think my role is to keep people focused on the fact that, you know, honestly, 90% of the businesses that we will help will not contract directly with a tier 1. They will go nowhere near Universal or even Luton Airport. We call it a waterfall effect, but supply chains are exactly that. They are a chain. So most people will be thinking about how they can supply the next link or 2 links above them in the chain. I think it's my job, that's my role in the business, to focus people on that part of it, the waterfall, because I think we come across a couple of sets of people. One is the small business who thinks they're going to contract directly with Universal. So we have to explain why that is possibly not the case, or at least if it's going to be the case, to Kirsty's point, what they need to do to get there. But moreover, there's a lot of businesses who still don't really understand how this is going to affect them. And they're the people that I'm talking to, because there's nobody, not a single human in this area that's not going to be affected by this. And, you know, we can already see this is not confirmed data, so I wouldn't hang my complete hat on it, but it was mentioned. It's like we needed so many hundreds or thousands of electricians, and actually there were not that many electricians registered in there wasn't enough registered in the county. And so what we're trying to do is sort of make people aware so that people can train. But also, I've got somebody I was talking with, and they have a fairly decent sized project, again in Bedford, but they're already sitting there worrying about, is that going to put the day rate up for their contractors because of all the other projects? So these are the things that people have to start thinking about the timings of their own projects. It might have nothing to do with Universal or any of the projects we've mentioned, but you're all drawing from the same pool of expertise. So before it hits, we kind of need to get ourselves ready, because there will be people who don't do anything, and I feel that they will suffer as a result of it, even if they have nothing to do with those core projects.
Yeah. We touched on sort of what the main kind of, I guess, goal, if you like, for BedX is obviously getting local businesses access to these opportunities. But it sounds a lot more like it's more like guiding and preparing everyone within the area for all of this is one of the main aims for this all. We can't access opportunities. I think we need to make that really clear. We don't help businesses to access them. We're not lobbying on behalf of anybody. We're not politically aligned. We're not aligned to Universal or any tier 1 contractor. What our role is in this is to be that opportunity exchange. So we sit in the middle as a conduit between the opportunities and the Bedfordshire businesses and help to inform, educate, prepare, get people ready
so they know what it is they need to do if they want to be part of it. And that's what our role is at the moment. And as over time, of course, it will evolve. But right now, we're focused on that preparation piece. So people are able to access those supply chains as that waterfall flows down into those tier 2 and 3, and even into 4 and 5 over the course of the project.
And yes, there is a handy household checklist as to what each tier means. So if you're like me and I'm going, which company do I sit in? We've already thought of that. And I believe it's on the BedX page at the Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce website, as is everything that we've done so far for everybody to view.
Yeah.
I think we should probably also say that whilst we are affiliated with the Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce, you don't have to be a member to benefit from BedX. That's something that's very clear. It's open to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And so that all that information is available on the website.
Yeah, Chamber of Commerce website. Yeah, there's 3 on-demand webinars available for people to access. One is working with tier 1 contractors, and that was done by Henry over at Kia. There is how to be tender or procurement ready, which I ran. And then there is how to write a good bid by Katie Beryl from Tender and Bid Writing Services. So there's 3 really good, informative webinars available already on the website, along with the tender diagnostic. Now, the tender diagnostic is a number 1 thing that any business in Bedfordshire that wants to be part of this can do to set themselves up for that best chance of success. Go ahead, put it up in front of you, spend 5 minutes going through it, and by the end of it, you'll have a really good idea of where you need to do some work, where you're already compliant, and what it is you need to do in order to be in the best place to access those opportunities. Takes around 5 minutes. You can't save it, so you need to make sure that when you sit down in front of it, you're ready with all of your information. But it'll give people a good understanding of those things that would come up in a pre-qualification questionnaire from a tier 1 right through to tier 4 contractor, the things that they're looking for. And interestingly, something that I've seen come up more over the last few months is the question, do you have ISO 27001? So before, Cyber Essentials used to be enough, but I'm sure you're seeing more requests as well for that 27001 piece because, there's the Trinity, right? 9,000, 14,000 and 45,001. They will always be good. But are you seeing more 27,001 requests coming through?
It's interesting, actually. So for anybody that's not sure, quality, environment and information security, those standards that Kirsty just mentioned, we're getting a combination of all of them. Quality is coming up as being probably number 1 in the last quarter. And I think there is a lot of political and economical factors that influence where businesses start on their journey. 27,001 is linked to whether it's in your, if it's linked to contractual measures quite a lot of the time. So when we get requests through for that standard, usually it's linked to that, I would say. And there's also some internal auditing that happens of supply chain within that standard. That's also really quite key. Businesses making sure that those that they're working with are compliant, whether they hold the standard or not. Yeah. So interestingly, 27,001, as you say, has become a bit more, it's come higher up the list in the supply chain than Cyber Essentials or even Cyber Essentials Plus at the moment. But I would say that, a lot of the businesses that are going for 27 probably have one or other or both of those. Yeah.
Over at Sizewell C, their tender ready diagnostic cites Cyber Essentials or 27,001 as being mandatory because it's some of the contracts of government. So I did think that was quite interesting as well, that is coming up so much now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the family of 27,001 standards as well. I think we might be doing some work on that in the next few months. There's 27,001 is obviously the first step, but there are other controls that can be added onto a management system that from cloud services or, from data protection that enhance that system as well, without actually having to have another certificate and going through and another cost type thing. So we have consultants within the business, our ISologists, that can do that and make that sort of, it's an add-on, but it has impact. And I think that's what we want to offer. Yeah.
we actually touched a bit on this earlier, Lorna. You kind of explained a bit more about sort of like your role within BedX. I don't think we kind of got that from Kirsty. So Kirsty, do you mind kind of explaining what your role is within BedX?
My role within BedX is very much coordination to make sure that things keep moving. So we're all really busy, but we all act as volunteers. And of course, we've all got busy day jobs as well. So I'm in the background, just making sure that people are doing the things that we said we'll do, but also making sure that everything that's needed at the meetings is there, because I've very much got a project planning background. So I take that expertise into the group. And then my other role is around that tender readiness and procurement readiness piece. Having worked adjacent to construction my entire career, I've seen more PQQs or pre-qualification questionnaires than you can shake a stick at. I know what good looks like when you're bidding for work. You know, I know what people are going to ask to see in those health and safety policies, your HR policies, your right to work checks. And that's where I can really add value within the group and get that expertise out to all of those Bedfordshire businesses that want to be part of this. And for me, like, whilst my role at BedX is very varied and I head up one of the subgroups, it is very much something I'm enjoying. I love being part of it. I love that bit where I'm able to help people because intrinsically I'm motivated to help people. That's just part of who I am. And BedX is allowing me to do that at scale for all of these Bedfordshire businesses. So what could be better than that?
Yeah, I think that's the same for both of you. And I see quite a lot on, you're both quite active on LinkedIn. I think Lorna more so. I quite enjoy reading Lorna's posts on LinkedIn. Very insightful little stories and stuff. So if you want to keep up with sort of all of BedX's happenings and obviously what's happening with Kirsty and Lorna, I do recommend following them on LinkedIn. So we'll link that in the show notes so you can follow along with all the successes that come along with that. And I know you guys do quite a lot outside of it because obviously you're busy with your normal jobs, and then to do all of this on top of that as well, it's it really shows the commitment and passion that you've got for a group. And as you say, it's all purely just to help businesses in the area navigate this as everything changes within a very short span as well, because the Universal project I think had quite a short time frame considering the scale of the project.
2031 they're planning on opening, which is only like 5 years away. It's not long. It's the length of time most people put a forecast in front of potential investors, 5-year plan. So, you know, it's quite important.
So you mentioned earlier that obviously you don't have to be a member of the Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce to actually kind of get involved. So how can businesses get involved? Is it just a case of kind of like joining your webinars, or is, you know, how do they get involved and how much is there to kind of get involved with?
So at the moment it is the webinars, it's that tender diagnostic that we talked about. There's been the BedX launch event. That was back in April. It was a fantastic launch for BedX and what we're here to do for the Bedfordshire business community. There were people from Universal there, someone from over at Sizewell C, and Nick from Luton Rising, which is another big project at the Luton Airport. So there'll be more events coming down the line. There'll be more webinars and there will be more communication coming out as we start to ramp up those comms and as we hear more information on the projects that are happening.
Yeah, we have something planned for later in September. We haven't got the date yet, but, you know, that will be our next sort of event. So, yeah, just signing up for newsletters and things like that from the chambers is a really good way to make sure that you're kept informed of when we do send out the comms for that.
And there's some exciting developments coming down the line, and there may be somewhere for you to register your information coming up in the next few months.
Ooh, exciting.
Oh, and onto the pieces of info already available. Coming soon is something like an easy guide to reporting of social value. So that's just been prepped for publishing at the moment. But that was something that we got from the tender diagnostic, wasn't it? That a lot of people weren't quite sure how to report for social value. And it is an important piece of information that is a legal responsibility for tier ones and possibly some tier twos to do. So obviously they look for anyone feeding into them to do the same. So we've put together a little bit of a helping presentation, really, isn't it, for people to look at what is not as difficult as you might think. And most people are already doing the requirements without writing it down.
I think that's absolutely right, Lorna. Most businesses are doing things. They may not document that. And documenting it is going to be the evidence needed, as you say, for these tenders. So if you can't, if you need help with that, depending on what it is, one of our businesses are sure to be able to help. But being tender ready, I think acting now is the key message I'm hearing here. Act now, be ready, have a look at that tender diagnostic and see where you are. You need that acid test, don't you, initially? Where does my business sit? Where do I want to be? And what do I need to do? So very clearly that all this planning that you've been doing is going to have such a big impact for businesses. And you say 5 years. 5 years isn't a lot of time, but 5 years is enough time for a new business to start and be part of it. So even if, you don't actually have a business at the moment, you mentioned electricians. That's, the learning, the experience that you need can be developed within that time to be part of that lower down the chain. So it's not all about exactly who's around at the moment, but who will be around when they're needed and are they ready?
We've got a couple of examples that have already come out, haven't we? That right when we started BedX, there was an example about them looking for a laundry, right? And yeah, just a Google search pointed them right the ways over to Peterborough. But there's actually one in Bedford. Now, that tells you something, that's that, am I visible out there on social, am I visible to not so much a Google search these days, but an AI search? A lot of people will have invested a lot of time and effort looking at their SEO. That really needs changing. That's something that everyone can do to make sure that they are searchable to the same extent on AI searches, because they use different algorithms. Another one was from America, was a snippet from, I think, maybe Universal Florida, when they were explaining that, the Harry Potter chocolate frog. Well, you can buy that from Universal's, but it was a small 2-person company that they first bought and developed the chocolate frog. So, there are examples of small companies that have made it big through these things. It's not out of the question. People shouldn't be put off. I just think that the diagnostic, please don't be put off if you get a rubbish score. I did it. I got a rubbish score. My business is not set up to tender, but what it does do is give you this really handy, helpful hints. That means that you can make the improvements that are relevant to the business that you're running. Like I say, not everybody is going to be doing PQQs or RFIs. A lot of people won't even understand what those initials mean, but it just helps you know where there might be gaps for you to hit your business out of the ballpark. In other words, it doesn't have to be any of these. It could be just in the normal day-to-day running of your business as it stands today. It will give you information that will help you improve.
There was a gentleman stood up at the BedX event right at the end, and he said that he had tendered to work with Harry Potter Studios over in Leavesden. And he said it was difficult, but it was worth it. And Ashley from Sizewell C kind of reiterated that these tendering processes down the chain for these big projects, they can be difficult, they can be daunting, but they're absolutely worth it. And it's worth putting that time in. And you, like Lorna said, you could be the people with the chocolate frog for Bedfordshire. But if you don't know where you stand, you don't know what the barrier to that chocolate frog is, and the tender diagnostic gives you that.
I mean, going back to the actual BedX event, I wasn't there myself, totally gutted, but there was a farmer stood up, right? If I remember correctly, and he was talking straight to the Universal representative on stage. And he said he was a farmer. He wanted to know if he should be planning to plant different crops so that locally there was the correct food chain available. Now that is like really massively forward thinking of them, but it is the sort of thing that if we can encourage that way of thinking around the county, then we're all going to be so much better placed. We may not be dealing with Universal, but maybe I own a coffee shop and I want to attract overseas people that might be visiting Universal. So it means that, perhaps I should think about what I offer. Perhaps I need to be a little more continental, or maybe I'll go the other way and be quintessentially British. Maybe that's what people want to see. But if you think about it now, you have time to do something in advance. You have time to prepare. That's what we're trying to give people, time to prepare in whatever way is appropriate for them.
Yeah, because the window is now, right? The supply chains are being formed.
100%. The window is now.
It's happening. The window is now. Now is the time to start thinking about it.
And I think there's one more thing that we probably haven't touched on here, and the BedX does allow it, but it's a thing that goes on all around us, and that's networking. And probably, like everybody, I sit and think, oh my God, networking, please tell me I've got to stand up and give a minute of what I am, But honestly, making connections around Bedfordshire now, it's probably one of the most powerful things you can do. Do try and get out to a local networking group. The Chamber does massive ones. They're brilliant, but every town has its own brand. You can do whatever you want, but it's so important to interact with your fellow business owners, whatever size, because, some of these deals can't be won unless we work together. So, making those connections, collaboration is the way that we all win. Well, that's my personal opinion. There are other opinions that count, obviously, but that's my personal opinion.
No, I'd mirror that, Lorna. Like we've talked about collaborate to compete, and I delivered a small seminar over at an event last October, and we talked about the Chamber being that network and making sure that you lean on it and that you know what's going on, because those relationships that are forming are going to be so important to not just the supply chain, but understanding what's going on, and then your name being in the room when you're not. If no one knows you exist, they can't talk about you, right? And like Lorna talked about the laundry and Googling, and it's the same thing. If you're not visible in the local area, when someone says, oh, do you know a financial company that could help? Do you know someone that does ISOs? If you're not visible, no one's going to talk about you.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're going to, it's quite a good list there for people to sort of keep in mind if they want to sort of get involved with all of this is, as you say, collaboration, networking, building those connections, making yourself seen, small things, as you say, that you can start doing immediately, building up your social media presence. It's a huge thing nowadays. I myself work on the social media for Blackmores, and yet can I be understated how important it is to make sure that people can find you when they're looking for certain things. Is there like anything else that you can think of that, people can be doing right now, early doors, to sort of prepare for all of this, I guess, as well as obviously gathering evidence for those tenders and those other forms that you mentioned that people need to keep in mind?
Just dream big. Dream big.
Yeah.
I think Be the Chocolate Frog should be your next LinkedIn post, Lorna.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think we've probably invested quite a lot in that chocolate frog from my house. So, yeah. Knowing that came from a very small company is actually quite nice.
Yeah.
The first slide of my webinar that I delivered for BedX says, if you ever wondered whether or not you were able to bid for bigger opportunities, then this webinar is for you. Because as Lorna said, dream big. Why not try?
Yeah.
Give it a go. If you do the tender diagnostic and it says you're in good shape, start and put your bid library together. There is nothing standing between these opportunities other than people's will to want to achieve that, to be that chocolate frog. That's it. The opportunities are there. We're Bedfordshire based. It said in the planning permission that they would look to hire people, or the supply chain would have that local focus. And whilst Universal and those tier one suppliers won't lower their standards just because you're from Bedford, it absolutely doesn't mean that you can't go for those jobs just because you are a small Bedfordshire company.
I think that's a really important point, that assuming that you have two companies of equal capabilities, etc., then being local will tip it over. So, our job is to make sure that we are as good as the next guy.
Yeah.
Because being local will make the difference in that instance. But as Kirsty said, being local will not make up for gaps.
No, procurement's risk management, and these businesses want to know that you can do what you say you're going to do and that they've mitigated as much risk as possible through those initial contract stages. So it's not enough to just say, yes, we're safe. Yes, we have this. They're looking for evidence that you do what you say you do, that you will act in a safe way whilst you're on site, that you will act reputably, and that you're able to deliver on what it is that you've promised to do. So if you're able to do all that, put those case studies in front of people that says, look, these are examples of things that we've done in the past. Here's our CVs for each of the people that would work on this site. And it lists their qualifications and their experience. All of those things are little ticks in that risk management box that says, yes, they've got those qualifications that are needed. Yes, they've got this. And that they've thought about how they could be there. And Lorna talked about that social value guide. And that's something else that's really important as well, because over time, the scoring for bids has moved away from just being on price and experience. And social value has become part of that scoring criteria, and it can account for up to 20% of the bid scores.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're able to evidence that social value, that you're able to talk about what you do. And as Lorna said, everybody's already doing something. You've just got to be able to articulate it in a way that they can score. And that's how you win. It's about us helping businesses to understand how to do that bit and put it all together in a nice little package.
And just to bring that back to the smaller businesses, it's more important than ever for smaller businesses to be able to win on service. So when we're talking about, being able to deliver on what you promise, that's as important, if not more important, in the micro business and the small businesses, because, people have such a choice these days. You've got to stand out. And doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it is probably the best way that you can ensure that people return to you time and time again. So, it's not a big company thing. It doesn't have to have a tender or, a big ticket at the end of it. It's just a fundamental requirement of doing business in anything today. You sit in a coffee shop and someone says they'll bring the tea over and it takes half an hour. You don't go back. You sit in a coffee shop and it says, we make everything from scratch. It may take a little longer. Then as long as you do make it from scratch, it's a different, but you just have to know that what you say is what you do and do it. And I think, the tender diagnostic kind of helps you think in that way, regardless if whether or not you're going to actually put in a tender.
Okay. So sort of in summary then, it's being able to demonstrate that you do what you said you do, that you've got the policies and procedures or your CVs and your library ready to be able to compete, that your people are competent. Obviously, you have to be able to prove that, not just say it. And if it comes to it, being properly certified to standards and making sure that you've got the financial stability and the resilience to deliver what you're saying you're going to do. So thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. It's been lovely talking to you and lovely hearing about everything that you're doing behind the scenes. I know you work so hard on all of this, and it is just making it so easy for everybody else, I think, to be able to get onto that train as well and join you on that journey, and hopefully be successful and get part of the business that's going to be on offer. So thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for all of those insights and for introducing our audience to the BedX group. If people want to keep up with what BedX is doing, you can follow the Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce on LinkedIn, as I mentioned earlier. They also have their own dedicated website, so check out www.chamber-business.com/BedX, and I'll link that in the show notes so you have easy access. I also highly recommend, again, following both Lorna and Kirsty while you're at it on LinkedIn. Both are keen to promote BedX's upcoming events and successes, so you can keep up with all of that there. And that's it from us today. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.